Welcome back, everyone. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Threads, the Meta-created so-called Twitter killer. Now, we have Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk saying that they're going to be fighting in a cage match. They agreed online to this fight. And maybe it will happen, maybe it won't, but I think the real fight, the real cage match going down right now is between Threads and Twitter. See, Meta's really trying to go for the jugular. They're really going for Twitter's customer base. They created the new app, it's called Threads, and you've probably heard about it right now. Maybe you have an account. But it looks very similar to Twitter. In fact, when you use it, I can bring up my screen here. See, it looks a little bit like Twitter. You have your name, you have your little profile picture there. There's no banner like Twitter. But then you have your tweets. Well, these aren't really tweets. I'm not sure what we're calling them. Maybe threads. We're calling each one of these now threads. But they look and feel a lot like tweets. You have a quick short message, maybe a picture. You can also upload a GIF or you can upload video. It supports all those different formats. And then underneath one of the posts, if you go into it, you can have people reply. This is Threads. It is a like for like copy and paste job of Twitter. It is basically the exact same thing. The exact same thing without Elon Musk. Instead of Elon Musk, what you get is Mark Zuckerberg. So you're trading Mark Zuckerberg for Elon Musk, and he's going around replying and having fun on his feed as well, just like you see Elon Musk with Twitter. This is really just an odd thing. We have two different platforms, almost identical to each other, each of them being ran by a billionaire, and both the billionaires have agreed to compete and fight together, literally fighting together in an arena. It seems like something out of an episode of Black Mirror. It's almost like you're getting deja vu. A lot of the content on Threads feels very similar. It's the same group of people. Immediately people are forming groups and social circles that are very similar to Twitter. But of course, there's some notable differences as well. In this video, we're going to go over my first impressions of Threads, whether or not I think this thing will be very successful, whether or not I think it's going to steal Twitter's customers, and whether or not I believe this will impact Meta in a positive way. A lot of investors in Meta are excited about this, and we're going to be looking at it from an investor standpoint as well. So we have a lot to get into in this episode, a lot to cover. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, as always, we have to give an update on the story fund here. And if you're one of the new members to the channel, we've had a lot of new people join recently. Make sure you follow both of my YouTube channels. I have one of them that's just called Joseph Carlson, where I track the passive income portfolio. That's this one here. It's full of high quality compounding companies that I buy large stakes into, hold them long term, and then I show you my allocation and what I'm doing every single week. So I give constant updates on this. And the other one that I started more recently is called the Story Fund. The Story Fund is a little bit more volatile. I pick companies that have higher betas, a little bit higher risk to them, and it's a smaller portfolio concentrated into a few mostly tech companies. Now, I track the performance of this and give constant updates on it as well. Right now, we're basically flat. We're down 0.93%. So if I look at this against the S&P 500, we've caught up a lot. We've closed in the gap, but we're still trailing it by around 8 or 9%. So we still have a ways to go to catch up to the S&P 500. But right now, we can take a look at the holdings, and they're organized by the largest holding. So at the very top, we have Amazon. I think Amazon has a lot of growth drivers, a lot of intrinsic value between the third-party retail business, AWS, the ads business, the Prime subscription. All of the core parts of the business are growing. It's been overshadowed by their large capex, but I think that those core parts of the business will continue growing. So I'm hanging on to this one. Netflix is one that I think is a long-term inevitable winner. I think there's a high likelihood this company will generate growing cash flows in the future. There is a small chance of disruption, so it could end up as a failed story. We'll see with the earnings report coming up. But I still like Netflix. I'm still going to hold this one long term. And then we have some more familiar companies here: Google, Microsoft, Adobe, Apple, Salesforce. A lot of the bigger tech companies, I've been incredibly bullish on these companies for a long period of time. Meta used to be one of these holdings. I used to hold the company. I've been in the green a couple $1,000s on it. I decided to take my gains and sell out of the company once Mark Zuckerberg started talking about the metaverse. After that, I really haven't had much to do with the company. But I will admit that Meta is, amongst all the social media companies, which I don't like social media companies in general. I've looked at the industry. I really don't like the industry in general. But in that industry, this is the best company by far. It's the only one that consistently generates good profits and free cash flow. Every other company, whether you're talking about Twitter or Snapchat, you have Pinterest, you have all these other ones, and long term, they have not given good returns. It's not a great industry to invest in. Mark Zuckerberg and Meta have figured out how to properly monetize this industry, how to copy features, how to maintain a huge user base and grow and branch out into different applications. They've done it better than anyone. So Meta is always the standout winner in this industry. And if I was going to add a social media company back into my portfolio, it would be Meta. This would be the one that I'd pick. Now let's go ahead and move on to the latest move from Zuck, copying Twitter with this new application called Threads. First of all, why did Mark Zuckerberg feel that this was the thing to do, to copy Twitter? Well, I think there's some bigger meaning to this. There's some reasons he decided to do this. I had the opportunity about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now, to talk to a Meta employee. He was one of the long-term employees of Meta. In fact, he had been there for over 8 years. So he was a very senior employee. He had been there for a long period of time. And I had around an hour-long conversation with him, just chatting about the company, the culture, the morale, the thoughts of employees, what the work environment was, and everything about Meta. And one of the things that he shared in that conversation is he shared what Meta's good at. He said, Joseph, if you were to talk about what the superpower is of Meta, the thing that we are really, really good at, the thing that we do better than anyone else, it is opening up new avenues for growth, new applications, new features, and spinning them up to billions of users. No other company can do that like Meta, and we've done it time and time again. We did it with WhatsApp, getting it to 1 billion users. We did it with Instagram, buying a small company. Nobody thought it was really worth all that much, getting it to over 1 billion users. We even do it with all kinds of features like stories, taking a feature and getting it to 1 billion users using it. Or like the marketplace on Facebook. Or like copying Reddit with Facebook groups. We do it with every different product and feature. We can either acquire small social companies and spin them up to billions of users, or we can copy small features and spin the usage up to billions of users. And that is Meta. That is the intrinsic value driver of this company. Looking at different features, buying smaller companies, and spinning them up to massive user bases, and doing it quickly and effectively with predictability. They've done it very consistently when you compare to other companies. So that's what this company does. That's what drives the results of Meta. Now, an issue that they've ran into is Meta has recently become so big that acquiring other companies like Instagram or like another WhatsApp is simply not in the cards. They know that. They can't do any acquisitions. If they tried to acquire anything right now, the government would step in and tell them no. Keep in mind that at one point in time, the government literally blocked Meta from acquiring Giphy, a GIF creating app. That is how reluctant the government is to let Meta grow in any capacity through acquisition. So acquisitions are off the table completely. Meta knows that. Zuckerberg knows that, but he still is ambitious. This guy is competitive. He wants to grow Meta, and the government's not going to stop him. So the other alternative to acquisition is, of course, growing organically. In this case, through replication. Twitter has been around for a long period of time. Mark Zuckerberg has known about Twitter for a long period of time. He says that Twitter is like a clown car that fell into a gold mine. It is extremely mismanaged. Mark Zuckerberg has thrown shade at Twitter over and over again, saying that they should have been at 1 billion users a long time ago, that they've had their chance. He literally just posted that yesterday. They've already had their chance to be at 1 billion users. He said that Twitter is so insignificant at this point that they spend more on security than the entire expense budget of Twitter. That's how big Meta is compared to Twitter. So he's already thrown a lot of shade, a lot of criticism at Twitter, and now he thinks he can simply do it better. So they decided to replicate Twitter, build Threads from the ground up, make it look similar in an attempt to simply take Twitter's customer base, whatever that may be. And to not only take the customer base, but Mark Zuckerberg thinks that it's so mismanaged, he can do it a lot better. He can make the dopamine hits better. He can make the engagement better. He can make the experience better. Mark Zuckerberg says he's trying to make Threads friendlier. This is a strategic pivot from Twitter. So Zuck doesn't want this to be a carbon copy of Twitter. He wants to make some changes. He wants this to be a friendlier version of Twitter. Now, he's also mentioned his long-term goals on this. He's taking a long-term approach. He says, our approach will be the same as all our other products. Make the product work well first, then see if it can get on a clear path to 1 billion people. See right there, That is the same that they try to do with every new product they spin up. If it doesn't get to 1 billion users, it's basically a failure by Meta standards. We have the goal right there, above 1 billion users. And he says, and only then I think about monetization at that point. So 1 billion users first, then monetization. Now, within the first day, as of right now, Threads has a confirmed 25 million signups. 25 million within a single day. And it's probably going to be 27, maybe 30 million by the end of this day. We'll see. I wouldn't even be surprised if it got up to 40 or 50 million. There is momentum. The communities are filling up. The algorithm is actually already starting to work. So getting past that scary hurdle, the first part of if anybody's actually going to join and if it's going to get momentum, if the network effects are starting to build, it already seems like it passed that point. Threads is already at a point where there are some network effects. There's already some big users on there, and more are going onto it every single minute. So why did Zuckerberg decide to do this? I think the reasons are pretty simple. They can't grow through acquisitions, so they have to build something new. They saw weakness in Twitter with some mismanagement and struggles with it. And this is something that's typically in their core competency, building a new app or acquiring an app and spinning up massive usage. All of that makes sense. Now, the more difficult question remains. What does this mean for Meta and what does this mean for Twitter? And this is where I believe a lot of investors will get their analysis wrong, because the simple logic of Meta creating Threads and Threads growing in popularity doesn't necessarily mean that it's overall good for Meta. Allow me to explain. A lot of investors 5 years ago, including me being one, looked at Disney as a company. They had a lot of assets, a good ecosystem, and they had a catalyst. The catalyst was a new streaming service called Disney Plus. Now, the predictions here was that Disney Plus would be widely successful. It'd gain a lot of users. People would really enjoy the new Disney Plus service. And investors bought into this as well, believing that as the company gained more and more subscribers on Disney Plus, the company would benefit from it. But what we saw was a little bit of the opposite. As Disney grew in Disney Plus subscribers, the cash flows of the company went down. Because really all that happened was Disney went from a company that made money through cable TV, which was highly lucrative with high margins, to Disney Plus. All of their customers that were still on cable TV started switching off of cable TV to Disney Plus. So they lost a very high margin customer that was incredibly optimized, and they transferred those customers to a newer service that was lesser optimized and actually lost money. So overall, Disney as a business, their economics in total suffered despite the fact that Disney Plus is a success. It has grown, it's gained a lot of user base. And we can see a little bit of the same thing with Threads. Mark Zuckerberg has said that they're not even gonna look at monetization until they reach 1 billion users. It's not even a concern until that point. So it's basically a profit losing, just a website out there that they're not going to monetize until they hit 1 billion users. So up until that point, people are using it basically for free. Meta doesn't have any net gain. And the more important question in this calculation of how much it benefits or doesn't benefit Meta is, where are these users coming from? If the people using Threads come from Twitter and they were using Twitter before, then Threads is obviously benefiting. Meta is benefiting in that scenario. But if people are migrating from Facebook to Threads or from Instagram to Threads, and their usage on Threads is going up, but their usage on Instagram and Facebook is going down, then that basically is neutral. They're moving from one Meta property to another Meta property. How does Meta benefit there? In fact, it would be difficult for them to benefit because the historical properties, Instagram and Facebook, are highly optimized. They already have ads baked in right now. They're already highly profitable per user. Threads is not. But how this ultimately pans out, I don't know. And my strong suspicion is that this is going to benefit the Meta investor less than investors suspect. I think it's going to be maybe a slight benefit to the company, but not a massive one. The reason being is because even though you're hearing these massive usership gain, 50 million, 100 million, 200 million, That may look like really good news, but you have to keep in mind, where did these users come from? If they came from Instagram and Facebook, then it doesn't really benefit Meta that much. But most of the users that were using social media today and the people that will be using Threads have been using social media before. They were using it last week. So when you do your analysis on Meta and you try to figure out how this impacts the stock long term, just keep that in mind. Where did the engagement for these users get pulled from? That is a huge question in this calculation. But overall, I do think this is a good move for Meta. They have another property in their ecosystem of social media apps for users to enjoy. And the more that they can pivot and continue to grow their optionality within it, I think is overall a positive thing, even if it doesn't directly impact the finances today. Now, the next question is, what does this mean for Twitter? I don't believe that this is going to be a Twitter killer. I think it will be a competitor, but not a killer. Twitter has so many users with already so many followers, and it's so deeply ingrained in people's daily routine when they check their notifications and everything they do, that it's very difficult to uproot those network effects. If Threads was able to actually kill Twitter, I would be shocked and surprised. I think that that's very unlikely. There is a chance of it, but I think it's incredibly unlikely. My expectation is that Twitter continues to look like it normally does. The users on it continue to post like they normally do, and the people using Threads that are new to Threads continue to do a lot of cross-posting on Twitter. Most content creators, influencers, journalists, news outlets want to meet their customers and their followers wherever they may be. So I see a lot of people that are going to be doing cross-posting and using both platforms. But that's my thoughts overall. I thought you'd enjoy a little update on this. We'll continue to follow it and see how this turns out.